Earth's smallest fleet ship was chosen for the impossible mission. Aliens never saw it coming. The Coalition fleet yard above the planet Threnvos was a city of metal. Thousands of ships floated in neat rows, each one bigger than the last. Warships from the Draxu Empire looked like flying mountains. Cruisers from the Sonari Union glowed with soft blue light and stretched for kilometers. Even the trade ships from smaller races were larger than most buildings on Earth. And then there was the Wren. The Wren was a small ship. It was so small that other captains often laughed when they saw it parked among the giants. It was barely 100 meters long, shaped like a narrow arrowhead, with dull gray armor plating that had been patched so many times it looked like a quilt. Its official class was Scout Corvette, but most people in the fleet just called it a shuttle with delusions of grandeur. It belonged to Earth. It was, in fact, the smallest ship in the entire unified sentient coalition fleet. Inside the Wren, 12 humans went about their day like it was any other. Captain Elena Reyes sat in the pilot chair on the bridge, going over maintenance reports on a small screen. She was 34 years old, with short black hair and tired eyes that still managed to look sharp. She had been flying ships since she was 18, first for the old United Nations Space Corps, then for the Coalition after Earth joined the wider galaxy 9 years ago. Another day, another apology to the dock crew, she muttered, reading a message from the shipyard. The Wren's left engine had been making a strange whining noise for 2 weeks, and the mechanics kept telling her it was probably fine, which in mechanic language usually meant, "We have no idea." Behind her, at the science station, sat Lieutenant Priya Nair. She was the youngest member of the crew, only 26, but she had graduated top of her class at the Bangalore Institute of Applied Physics before joining the fleet. She spent most of her free time reading old alien texts that the Coalition had translated, trying to learn as much as she could about every species they might meet. "Captain, the engine noise isn't a big deal," Priya said, without looking up from her screen. "I ran a diagnostic last night. It's just a loose coupling in the coolant line. I can fix it in 20 minutes. "You're not an engineer, Priya." "I'm an engineer today," Priya said cheerfully. "Chief Okafor is busy sleeping." At that exact moment, a large man came stomping onto the bridge, still buttoning his uniform jacket. Chief Engineer David Okafor was not sleeping, though he looked like he wished he still were. He was the oldest person on the crew, 51 years old, with gray hair at his temples and forearms like tree trunks from decades of working on ship engines. "I heard my name," he said, yawning, "and I heard someone say they were going to touch my coolant lines without me." "It was a joke," Priya said quickly. "It better have been." Okafor sat down heavily at the engineering station. "That engine has been with me for 6 years. I know its every mood. It's not broken. It's just complaining, like the rest of us." Captain Reyes smiled slightly. This was normal life on the Wren. The ship was small, the crew was small, and because of that, everyone knew everyone. There were no long hallways where you might not see a crewmate for days. There was no giant mess hall with 1,000 strangers. On the Wren, 12 people worked, ate, and lived together, in a space not much bigger than a large house. They had become, over the years, something close to a family. There was Commander Marcus Cole, the second in command, a calm and careful man who had once been a submarine officer in the old U.S. Navy before humanity discovered they were not alone in the universe. There was Ensign Sophia Marchetti, the youngest officer besides Priya, who handled communications and had a talent for languages that seemed almost supernatural. There was Dr. Tomas Vidal, the ship's only doctor, who also doubled as the cook because, as he put it, keeping people healthy and keeping people fed are basically the same job. And there were 7 more crew members, each one skilled, each one a little bit strange in their own way, each one fiercely loyal to their tiny ship. Humanity had only been part of the unified sentient coalition for 9 years. Before that, humans had believed they were alone in the universe, the only intelligent species looking up at the stars and wondering. That belief had shattered the day a coalition scout ship entered the solar system to study a strange radio signal, only to discover an entire planet full of curious, argumentative, endlessly creative beings. The coalition welcomed Earth, cautiously. Humans were new. Humans were, by galactic standards, weak. Their ships were slow. Their weapons were primitive. Their entire fleet, when they joined, consisted of a handful of research vessels that had never been built for war. So when it came time for Earth to contribute ships to the Coalition fleet, humanity built what it could. And what it could build, with limited resources and even more limited experience, was small. The Wren was the very first ship humanity ever sent into deep space, as part of the Coalition fleet. It had been meant as a symbol more than a warship. A way of saying, we are here, we want to help, even if we cannot yet build what you build. Many people, both human and alien, expected the Wren to be retired within a year or two, quietly replaced by something bigger and more impressive as Earth's shipyards improved. That had been 6 years ago. The Wren was still flying, and it had become, without anyone quite planning it, one of the most experienced small ships in the Coalition. It had survived 2 pirate ambushes in the Kethri Belt. It had rescued a stranded mining crew from a burning asteroid station. It had, memorably, once escaped an entire squadron of hostile raiders by flying directly through the debris field of a shattered moon, a maneuver that larger ships were too big and too slow to attempt. Other captains in the fleet had started calling it the little ship that would not die. Not always kindly, sometimes it was said with respect. More often, it was said with a smirk, the kind of joke you make about someone smaller than you, someone you have decided is not really a threat, someone you have decided does not really matter. Captain Reyes had learned not to care what other captains thought. Her ship worked, her crew was good. That was enough for her, most days. Today, however, felt different. At 0900-hour ship time, an alert chimed on the bridge. Ensign Marchetti sat up straighter at her communications station, her dark eyes scanning the message that had just arrived. "Captain," she said, "we have a priority transmission. Coalition Fleet Command. Direct to you. Encrypted. Top clearance level." Reyes frowned. Priority transmissions to a scout corvette were rare. Priority transmissions with top clearance were almost unheard of. "Put it through to my private terminal," she said. She walked to the small office behind the bridge, really just a closet with a desk and a screen, and closed the door. The message decrypted itself, revealing the face of Admiral Threx Kahlo, a tall, blue-skinned Sonari officer who commanded the entire Coalition Third Fleet. Reyes had met him exactly twice before, both times in large meetings with dozens of other captains present. She had never spoken to him alone. "Captain Reyes," Admiral Kahlo said, his voice deep and formal. "I am contacting you personally, because what I am about to ask cannot go through normal channels. I need your answer, and I need it today." "I'm listening, Admiral." 3 days ago, a Coalition listening post, near the edge of Draxu territory, detected an unknown transmission. We believe it originated from a species we have never encountered before, a species that the Draxu Empire refers to only as the Silent Ones. The Draxu have fought 2 brief wars with this species over the past century, and both times, entire fleets vanished. Not destroyed, vanished. No wreckage, no survivors, no transmissions. Ships simply stopped answering, and were never seen again. Reyes felt a chill despite herself. "That's concerning, Admiral. It gets worse. Our analysts believe the Silent Ones have built something at the edge of their territory. Something enormous. Something that has been drawing massive amounts of energy for the past several months. We do not know what it is. We do not know what it does. But every large sensor probe, every large scout ship, every large anything we have sent near that region has failed to return. You think whatever this is, it detects big ships," Reyes said slowly, understanding beginning to dawn. "We believe so, yes. Our scientists have a theory, still unconfirmed, that the detection system used by the Silent Ones is calibrated for ships above a certain mass and energy signature. It may be designed specifically to catch military vessels, war fleets, anything large enough to be a threat." Admiral Kahlo paused. "Which is why I am calling you, Captain Reyes. The Wren is the smallest active combat vessel in the entire Coalition fleet. Its energy signature, according to our models, would fall below the detection threshold we believe the Silent Ones are using. Your ship might be able to go where no other ship can." Reyes sat back in her chair. For a long moment, she said nothing. "Admiral, with respect, you're asking me to fly my ship into a region where entire fleets have disappeared, based on a theory that hasn't been confirmed." "I am," Kahlo said simply. "I will not pretend otherwise. This is dangerous, Captain. More dangerous than almost any mission I have ever assigned. I am not ordering you to accept it. I am asking. If you say no, I will understand, and I will find another way. But I believe, and my analysts believe, that the Wren gives us the best chance of learning what is happening at that border before it is too late. If the Silent Ones are building a weapon, and if that weapon is turned against coalition worlds, the cost of not knowing could be measured in billions of lives. Reyes thought about her crew. 12 people who trusted her. 12 people who had followed her through fire and vacuum and worse, and who had never once complained about flying the smallest, least respected ship in the fleet. She thought about what it would mean to be the ship, the tiny, mocked, little ship that would not die, that finally proved its worth on a mission no other ship in the galaxy could attempt. I'll need to talk to my crew, she said. But Admiral, I think you already know what we're going to say. Kahlo's stern face softened, just slightly. I had hoped so, Captain. I will send the full mission briefing within the hour. May your engines hold, and may your luck continue. The transmission ended. Reyes sat alone in the tiny office for a moment, staring at the blank screen, feeling the weight of what she had just agreed to. Then she stood up, straightened her jacket, and walked back onto the bridge. Every head turned toward her. They all knew something had happened. A private call from a full admiral did not happen for routine reasons. Gather everyone in the mess hall, Reyes said. All 12 of us. I have something to tell you, and I want to tell it to everyone at once. 15 minutes later, the entire crew of the Wren stood or sat, crowded into the small mess hall, the only room on the ship big enough to hold all 12 of them at the same time. Okafor leaned against the wall with his arms crossed. Priya sat cross-legged on top of a table, ignoring Dr. Vidal's disapproving look. Commander Cole stood at attention near the door, as he always did, like his old Navy habits had never quite left him. Reyes told them everything: the listening post, the unknown species, the vanished fleets, the theory about ship size and detection thresholds, the mission that no other ship in the coalition could attempt. When she finished, the room was silent for a long moment. Then Okafor spoke, his deep voice rumbling. So basically, Admiral Kahlo looked at every single ship in the entire coalition fleet, thousands of them, and decided the one best suited for this suicide mission is the one everybody makes fun of at the officers' mess. That's about right, Reyes said. A slow grin spread across Okafor's face. I love it. Sophia Marchetti raised her hand, half joking, half serious. Just to be clear, Captain, we are talking about flying toward a place where multiple entire fleets, including big ones, have completely disappeared. Just gone. No trace. That's what the Admiral said. And we're doing this because we're small, Sophia said. Not because we're strong. Not because we're brave. Because we're small enough that maybe, hopefully, they won't notice us. Also correct, Reyes said. Sophia looked around at the rest of the crew, then back at the captain, and slowly smiled. 6 years ago, when they gave us the smallest ship in the fleet, I was a little offended. I thought it meant Earth didn't think we mattered. But I've been thinking about it differently lately. Small doesn't mean weak. Small just means different. And maybe different is exactly what this mission needs. Priya nodded eagerly. Being small helped us before. Remember the debris field? We flew through gaps that the raider ships couldn't fit through. Being small has saved us more than once. Maybe this time it'll save a lot more than just us. Commander Cole finally spoke, his voice steady and quiet, the way it always was before he said something important. Captain, for what it's worth, I've served on this ship for 6 years. I've watched people underestimate us again and again. Every single time, it has worked in our favor. I don't know what's waiting for us out there. Nobody does. But if there is any ship in this fleet that has practiced succeeding exactly because people think it doesn't matter, it's this one. Reyes looked around the room at her crew. 12 faces. 12 people who had every reason to be afraid, and who were choosing, instead, to be ready. All right, she said. I'm not going to pretend this isn't dangerous. It is. Admiral Kahlo was honest with me about that, and I'm going to be honest with you. Ships have disappeared out there. We might not come back, but if we don't try, and that species really is building something dangerous, we might be condemning a lot more than 12 people. She took a breath. So I'm asking, not ordering, are we doing this? There was no hesitation. Aye, Captain, Okafor said. Aye, said Priya. One by one, around the room, every voice answered the same way. until the small mess hall echoed with 12 firm, certain voices, united in a decision that would change the course of the war nobody yet knew was coming. 3 hours later, the Wren detached from the fleet yard above Threnvos. Its small gray hull slipped quietly out of the enormous shadow cast by the Coalition's largest warships, drifting for a moment against the starfield, like a single leaf floating away from a great forest. On the observation deck of a nearby Draxu battlecruiser, an officer glanced out the viewport and noticed the tiny ship departing. He nudged his companion and pointed. "Look at that," he said, amused. "The little Earth ship is leaving. Wonder where they're sending that thing. Probably a supply run, or maybe they finally realized it belongs in a museum." His companion laughed. "Not our problem. Small ships, small missions." Neither of them knew, and would not know for weeks, that the small ship was about to fly further into danger than any vessel in Coalition history, and that its size, the very thing everyone had always mocked, might be the only reason humanity's first true war with an alien empire would end in victory instead of silence. The Wren's engines flared to life, and the little ship that would not die turned its narrow prow toward the edge of known space, toward the border of Draxu territory, toward the place where fleets went to vanish. Captain Elena Reyes sat in her chair, hands steady on the controls, and gave the order that began the impossible mission. "Punch it, Priya. Let's go meet the Silent Ones." The trip to the border of Draxu territory took 6 days. For most of that time, the Wren cruised quietly through Coalition space, following supply lanes used by cargo haulers and passenger liners, blending in as best it could. A ship its size drew little attention. That was, after all, the entire point. Captain Reyes used the 6 days well. She gathered her crew twice a day for briefings, going over every scrap of information Admiral Kahlo's staff had sent them. It was not much. The Coalition knew almost nothing about the Silent Ones, and what little it did know came mostly from old Draxu military records, translated imperfectly and shared reluctantly. On the 3rd day, the whole crew gathered in the mess hall, the largest open space on the ship, to review the intelligence together. Sophia Marchetti had rigged up a small holographic projector, salvaged years ago from a derelict trading post, that could display maps and images above the central table. "Here's what we know," Sophia said, bringing up a star map. A cluster of red dots appeared near the edge of Draxu space. "These are the locations where Draxu fleets vanished. 2 incidents, about 40 years apart. The first involved 11 warships. The second involved 19, including their flagship at the time, the Ash Crown." 19 warships, Okafor repeated, whistling low. "That's not a scouting party, that's a real fleet." "It gets stranger," Sophia continued. "In both cases, the fleets sent regular check-in signals right up until the moment they vanished. There was no distress call, no warning, no sign of battle. One moment they were reporting normal conditions, and the next, nothing. No wreckage was ever found, even after the Draxu searched the area for months with everything they had." Dr. Vidal frowned, his arms crossed. "Ships don't just disappear, though. Physics doesn't allow it. Something happened to them. Something the Draxu never figured out, or something they figured out and never told anyone." "That's the theory the Admiral's staff likes best," Reyes said. "The Draxu are proud. They don't like admitting weakness, especially not to newer Coalition members like us. It's possible they know more than they've shared, but honestly, based on how badly those 2 encounters went for them, I think it's just as likely they genuinely have no idea what happened." Priya had been quiet through most of the briefing, scrolling through data on her personal tablet. Now she looked up. "I found something interesting in the old sensor logs. It's buried pretty deep in the files, but right before each fleet vanished, their long-range sensors recorded a very faint energy fluctuation, almost nothing. If I hadn't been specifically looking for it, I would have assumed it was background noise." "What kind of fluctuation?" Reyes asked. "That's the strange part. It doesn't match any weapon signature in the Coalition database. It's not a beam weapon, not a missile launch, not a cloaking field being lowered. If I had to guess, and I want to be clear that this is a guess, I'd say it looks almost like a scanning pulse, like something reaching out to identify the ships before whatever happened. The room went quiet. "So they get scanned," Cole said slowly, "and then they disappear." "That's what the data suggests," Priya said. And it lines up with the Admiral's theory about mass and energy thresholds. If the scanning system is looking for something specific, like total ship mass, or total power output, or maybe even total crew size, a big war fleet would light up every sensor they have. A ship like ours, especially with our systems running lean, might barely register at all. Might, Okafor said pointedly. That's doing a lot of work in that sentence. I know, Priya admitted. I can't promise this will work. Nobody can. But it's the best theory anyone has, and it's the reason we're the ones flying this mission instead of a battle cruiser. Reyes studied the star map floating above the table, the small cluster of red dots marking 2 separate graveyards, each one holding the ghosts of entire fleets that had simply ceased to exist. All right, she said finally. Here's the plan. As much of a plan as we can make with the information we have. We approach the border region at low power, engines throttled down, running the ship as quiet as we possibly can. We do not use active sensors unless absolutely necessary. We rely on passive scanning only, and we go slow, one careful step at a time. Our goal is not to fight anything. Our goal is to see. If we can get close enough to observe whatever the Silent Ones have built out there, and get that information back to Fleet Command, we will have succeeded, even if we never fire a single shot. And if we're detected? Dr. Vidal asked quietly. Reyes did not answer right away. There was no good answer to give. Then we run, she said finally. As fast and as far as this ship can carry us. And we hope that whatever caught those Draxu fleets isn't fast enough, or interested enough, to catch something our size. It was not a comforting plan, but it was honest, and everyone in that room had chosen this mission with open eyes. Over the following 3 days, the crew prepared. Okafor and his small engineering team, which really just meant Okafor plus whoever he could recruit to hold tools for him, went over every system on the ship. They shut down every piece of equipment that was not strictly necessary. They dimmed the internal lighting to save power. They even discussed, briefly and only half seriously, turning off the ship's small gravity generator to reduce their energy signature even further, before Dr. Vidal pointed out that 12 people vomiting in zero gravity would probably reduce their combat effectiveness more than it would help them hide. Priya spent most of her waking hours in the small science bay, running simulation after simulation, trying to model what the Silent One's detection system might actually be looking for. She barely slept. On the 5th day, Reyes found her asleep at her console, an unfinished cup of cold tea sitting beside her hand, 3 different simulations still running on her screens. Reyes gently shook her awake. Go to your bunk, Priya, that's an order. Priya blinked blearily. I think I found something, Captain. I think the scanning pulse might have a pattern, a rhythm. If I'm right, it activates on a cycle, not continuously. There might be windows of time when it's less active. That's good work. But it'll still be there tomorrow. Sleep first. Priya, too tired to argue, finally nodded and shuffled off toward her bunk. On the 6th day, the Wren crossed into what the charts marked as contested border space, the wide, mostly empty region between coalition-aligned Draxu territory and the unknown zone controlled by the Silent Ones. The star charts here were incomplete. Coalition survey ships had mapped the outer edges decades ago, but no one had gone deep, not since the Draxu lost their fleets. Captain Reyes stood on the bridge, watching the starfield ahead of them. It looked, to her eyes, exactly like every other patch of empty space they had crossed over the past 6 days. Faint stars scattered across the black. No visible ships, no visible stations. Nothing that looked dangerous at all. That, somehow, made it worse. Priya, talk to me, Reyes said. Anything on passive scans? Nothing yet, Captain. We're still about 2 days out from the coordinates where the second Draxu fleet vanished. I'm keeping the sensors as passive as possible, just listening, not transmitting anything. Good. Keep it that way. Sophia, radio silence from here on out, except for emergency use. Understood, Captain, Sophia said. Radio silence in effect. The ship settled into an uneasy quiet. There was little for the crew to do but wait, watch their instruments, and try not to think too hard about the graveyard of 19 warships that lay somewhere ahead of them. Cole, ever practical, organized a rotation of rest shifts, making sure that no one stayed awake too long, that everyone got proper meals, that the ordinary rhythms of shipboard life continued, even as the tension slowly built. It was, Reyes reflected, one of the things that made him such a good second-in-command. He understood that a frightened crew that was well-rested and well-fed would perform far better than an exhausted crew running on fear alone. On the 7th day, roughly 30 hours before they would reach the coordinates of the second Draxu disaster, Priya's console chimed softly. "Captain," she said, her voice tight, "I'm picking up something. Passive sensors only, very faint. There's an object ahead of us, about 4 light hours out. It's large, very large." "Define large," Reyes said, moving to stand behind Priya's chair. "Based on the gravitational distortion I'm reading, and some faint thermal bleed, I'd estimate, Captain, I think it might be bigger than a moon, possibly much bigger." The bridge went very still. "That can't be a natural object," Cole said. "Not out here. This region was surveyed decades ago. There's no record of anything that large." "It's not natural," Priya confirmed, her fingers flying across her console. "The shape is too regular. I'm reading straight edges, symmetrical structures. Captain, I think we found it. I think we found whatever the Silent Ones have been building." Reyes felt her pulse quicken, a mix of fear and fierce curiosity. This was exactly what they had come to find, and exactly what every instinct in her body told her to run from. "Options," she said. "Give me options." "We could turn back now," Cole said carefully. "We've confirmed something is out here. That alone is valuable intelligence. We could return to Fleet Command with what we already know." "We don't know anything yet," Priya said, a little too quickly. "We know there's something big. We don't know what it does, what it's for, or whether it's connected to the disappearances at all. If we turn back now, the Admiral will have to send another ship to find out the rest, and that ship might not be as lucky as we've been so far." Reyes looked at the passive sensor readout, the faint blip representing something enormous floating in the darkness ahead of them, 4 light hours away, and getting closer with every passing hour. She thought about the 12 lives on her ship. She thought about the 19 ships and everyone aboard them who had vanished without a trace, without even a chance to say goodbye to whoever waited for them back home. She thought about what Admiral Kahlo had said. The cost of not knowing could be measured in billions of lives. "We keep going," she said quietly. "But carefully. Priya, I want continuous passive monitoring, but nothing active. Sophia, keep radio silence. Okafor, I want every non-essential system shut down within the hour. If that scanning pulse Priya found really does have a cycle to it, I want us running as quiet as physically possible when we get close enough to matter." "Aye, Captain," came the answers, one after another. Okafor paused before returning to his station. "Captain, for what it's worth, I think this is the right call. Scared, yes. Wrong, no." Reyes managed a small smile. "Let's hope you're right, Chief." Over the following day, the Wren crept closer, engines throttled to their lowest safe setting, every unnecessary light and system powered down until the ship ran in near darkness, lit only by the dim glow of essential instruments. The crew moved through the dim corridors quietly, speaking in low voices, as if noise itself might somehow give them away across 4 light hours of empty space. Priya barely left her station, watching the passive sensor feed with fierce concentration, gradually refining her estimate of the enormous structure ahead of them. By the time the Wren had closed the distance to just under 1 light hour, she had enough data to bring a rough image up on the main bridge screen. It was massive. It was shaped like nothing any of them had ever seen, a vast lattice of interconnected rings and spires, easily hundreds of kilometers across, humming with an energy signature unlike anything in the Coalition database. It hung in empty space, far from any star, any planet, any obvious reason for being there at all. Dr. Vidal, who had wandered up to the bridge to see for himself, stared at the image for a long moment. "What in God's name is that thing?" he murmured. "I don't know," Priya said softly. "But I don't think it's a weapon. Not exactly. The energy readings don't match anything designed purely for destruction. There's something else going on here, something I don't understand yet." Reyes stared at the massive structure on the screen, feeling the weight of it settle over the bridge like a physical presence. "Well," she said quietly, "we came here to find out what they built. Let's find out what it does." Behind the massive structure, unseen and unmeasured by any of the Wren's careful passive scans, something began, very slowly, to turn. The Wren drifted closer to the enormous structure, engines nearly silent, every crew member holding their breath without quite realizing it. On the main screen, the vast lattice of rings and spires grew larger with each passing hour, until it filled the entire view, blotting out the stars behind it. Priya worked without rest, gathering every scrap of passive data she could pull from the ship's sensors. Slowly, piece by piece, a clearer picture began to form. "Captain, I think I understand part of it now," she said, her voice hushed, as if the structure itself might overhear them. "This isn't one single object. It's built from thousands of smaller sections, all connected together. And Captain, some of those sections aren't part of the original structure at all." "What do you mean?" Reyes asked. Priya adjusted the image on the main screen, zooming in on one small area near the structure's outer edge. The resolution was poor, built from hours of patient passive scanning, rather than a proper active sensor sweep, but the shape was unmistakable. It was a ship. A Draxu warship, easily 2 kilometers long, held motionless within a kind of clear energy cradle, fused into the side of the larger structure, like an insect trapped in amber. The bridge went silent. "That's one of the fleets," Cole said quietly. "That's one of the ships that vanished." "Not destroyed," Priya said, her voice trembling slightly. "Captured. Preserved. Captain, I'm reading faint power signatures from that hull. Low level, but active. Some of its internal systems might still be running." "Is there anyone still alive on board?" Dr. Vidal asked sharply, stepping forward. "I don't know," Priya admitted. "Our passive sensors aren't good enough to tell from this distance, not without lighting ourselves up with an active scan. But Captain, if I'm reading this structure correctly, I think there might be more. A lot more." She adjusted the image again, pulling back to show a wider section of the massive lattice. Scattered among the geometric patterns of rings and spires, dozens of small irregular shapes stood out now that they knew what to look for. Ships. Many ships, of many different sizes, all held in the same strange, motionless captivity. 19 warships from the Second Fleet, Reyes said slowly, doing the math in her head. 11 from the First, that's 30. I'm counting a lot more than 30 shapes on that screen, Priya. "I know," Priya said. "I think this has been going on a lot longer than anyone realized. I think the Silent Ones have been doing this to other species too. Species the Coalition has never even made contact with. This might not just be a Draxu problem, Captain. This might be something much bigger." Reyes stared at the screen, at the dozens of trapped ships frozen in their strange energy cradles, and felt something cold settle in her stomach. This was no weapon built to destroy. This was something stranger, and in some ways more disturbing. A collection, a trophy case. Or perhaps something else entirely, something none of them yet understood. "Sophia," Reyes said, "any communication activity? Any signals coming from the structure itself?" Sophia had been monitoring the passive comm channels since they arrived, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Nothing conventional, Captain. No radio, no laser comm, nothing in any frequency range we recognize. But there is something. A very faint pulse, repeating at irregular intervals. It doesn't match any known communication protocol. It might just be some kind of internal system noise, or it might be—" "The scanning pulse Priya found in the old Draxu logs," Reyes finished. "That would be my guess, yes." Reyes closed her eyes for a moment, thinking. They had come here to gather information, and they had found far more than anyone expected. The question now was what to do with it. "We have what we came for," Cole said carefully. "More than we came for. I think it's time to consider turning back, Captain. We have confirmation the structure exists, evidence of captured ships, and data on the scanning pulse. Fleet Command needs this information as soon as possible." Reyes nodded slowly. He was right. Every instinct told her the same thing, and yet something held her back. "If there are survivors on those ships," she said quietly, "and we leave now, we might be condemning them to however many more years they've already spent trapped in there. If we can get close enough, even briefly, to confirm whether anyone is still alive, that information could change everything about how the Coalition responds." "Captain," Dr. Vidal said gently, "I understand the impulse, I do. But we are 12 people, on the smallest ship in the fleet, sitting less than a light hour away from a structure that has swallowed 30 warships without leaving a trace. If we get any closer, and that scanning pulse notices us, there may be no one left to rescue anyone at all. Reyes knew he was right. She looked around the bridge at her crew, all of them watching her, waiting for her decision. 1 hour, she said finally. We hold position here, run the passive scans as hard as we safely can, and gather everything we possibly can about that structure, and the ships inside it. After 1 hour, regardless of what we find, we turn around and head straight back to Coalition space, at maximum safe speed. Agreed? There were nods around the bridge, and a quiet murmur of agreement, though Dr. Vidal's frown did not fully disappear. For the next 40 minutes, the crew worked with quiet, focused urgency. Priya catalogued every ship shape she could identify within the structure, cross-referencing hull profiles against the Coalition's database of known vessel types. Sophia recorded every fragment of the strange pulse signal she could capture, hoping the linguists and cryptographers back at Fleet Command might eventually make sense of it. Okafor monitored the ship's systems obsessively, ready to bring the engines to full power at the first sign of trouble. It was Priya who found it, with 11 minutes left on Reyes's self-imposed deadline. Captain, I've got something. One of the trapped ships, a smaller one, maybe a scout vessel, the internal power signature just changed. It's not steady anymore. It's pulsing, almost like a heartbeat pattern. Captain, I think someone on board might still be alive, and they might be trying to signal something. Reyes leaned forward, studying the faint, irregular pulse on Priya's screen. It did have a pattern to it, an unmistakable rhythm that felt different from the mechanical regularity of the larger structure's scanning pulse. Can you make out anything more specific? A message? A code? Anything? I don't have enough resolution from here, Priya said, frustration creeping into her voice. I'd need to get closer, or use an active scan, and either one might get us caught, Reyes finished. I know. She stared at the pulsing signal, weighing the risk against the possibility, however small, that there was a living, thinking being trapped inside that structure, desperately trying to reach out to anyone who might be listening. Sophia, she said, can we send a very brief, very low-power signal back, something so faint it might not even register against that structure's own energy output, but enough that if there's someone alive over there with working sensors, they might notice it? Sophia thought quickly. I can try modulating a tight beam pulse on an old emergency frequency, something outdated enough that the silent ones might not be watching for it, but recognizable to anyone from a species that's had contact with the Coalition before. It's a gamble, Captain. If I get the power calibration wrong, we might light ourselves up like a signal flare instead. Do it carefully, Reyes said, as careful as you've ever been in your life. Sophia worked with intense concentration, her fingers moving with practiced precision across her console, checking and rechecking her power calculations 3 times, before finally sending the briefest possible pulse, a fraction of a second of focused, narrow beam transmission, aimed directly at the trapped scout ship. Then they waited. 10 seconds, 20, 30. Captain, Priya said suddenly, the pulse pattern from the trapped ship just changed. It's matching a rhythm now. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. That's an old distress signal, Cole said immediately. Ancient code, from before most species had reliable radio. If they're using it, they must think we might not share a common language yet, but they're hoping we'll recognize the pattern anyway. They're alive, Dr. Vidal breathed. Someone in there is actually alive. Reyes felt a fierce, complicated surge of emotion, hope, horror, and grim determination all tangled together. Somewhere inside that vast, cold structure, someone had been trapped for who knew how long, and had just found, against all odds, a way to answer. We can't get them out, Cole said quietly, before anyone could suggest it. Not with this ship, not with 12 people, and no idea what we're dealing with. If we try, we'll likely lose our own ship without saving anyone. I know, Reyes said. I'm not planning to try, but we're not leaving without doing something. She turned to Sophia. Send one more pulse. Tell them, in whatever way you can, with a signal this short, that we know they're there, that we're going to bring help. Then we're leaving, exactly as planned. Sophia nodded, crafting a second careful pulse, this one slightly longer, encoding a simple pattern that any species with basic mathematical understanding might interpret as reassurance and promise, rather than mere acknowledgement. The response came back almost immediately this time, the pulsing rhythm from the trapped ship changing to a new, steady pattern, slower and calmer than before, as if whoever was sending it had simply been waiting, for who knew how many years, for someone, anyone, to finally answer. "Time's up, Captain," Okafor said gently from the engineering station. "We're at the hour mark." Reyes took one long last look at the image on the main screen, at the vast structure and its silent cargo of captured ships, at the faint pulsing light that represented, somewhere in all that cold machinery, a living being who had just learned they had not been forgotten. "Take us home," she said. "Quiet as we came. Let's go tell the Admiral what we found." The Wren began its slow, careful retreat, engines still throttled low, running dark and silent back the way it had come. On the bridge, the crew worked in tense quiet, watching their instruments, watching for any sign that the massive structure behind them had noticed their presence. For nearly 6 hours, nothing happened. The Wren slipped further and further from the structure, the readings on Priya's sensors growing fainter and fainter, until it seemed, almost, that they might make it back to friendly space without ever having been detected at all. Then, without warning, every screen on the bridge flickered at once. "Captain," Priya said, her voice suddenly sharp with alarm. "I'm reading a massive energy spike from the structure. It's the scanning pulse. It's active, and it's 100 times stronger than the readings we recorded on the way in." "They see us?" Reyes asked, already moving toward her chair. "I don't know yet," Priya said, "but Captain, that pulse is moving. It's moving fast, and it's coming this way." Earth's smallest fleet ship was chosen for the impossible mission. Aliens never saw it coming. "Full power to engines," Reyes snapped, dropping into her chair. "Sophia, kill radio silence. We don't need it anymore. Okafor, give me everything you've got." "Engines spinning up now," Okafor called back, his hands flying across his console. "It'll take 90 seconds to reach full output, Captain. She's been running cold for 2 days. She needs a moment to wake up." "We might not have a moment," Priya said, watching the sensor readout with wide eyes. "That pulse is closing distance fast. Faster than anything I've ever seen move. Captain, I don't think it's a ship. I think it's some kind of energy wave, or a very fast probe. I can't get a clear read on it." Reyes forced herself to think clearly, pushing down the fear that wanted to take over. "Talk to me, Priya. Is it definitely tracking us, or could it be some kind of general area sweep?" Priya's fingers danced across her controls, pulling up new data. It changed direction twice in the last 30 seconds, both times to correct toward our position. "Captain, I think it's tracking us. I think we've been found." "Understood." Reyes's mind raced through options, discarding them almost as fast as she found them. Running in a straight line would only give whatever was chasing them a clean shot. Standing and fighting was suicide, against something that had swallowed 30 warships without a scratch. Cole, options, now. Commander Cole had already pulled up the star charts on his own console, studying the terrain around them, with the same calm focus he brought to every crisis. "There's a debris field 2 minutes ahead of our current heading, Captain. Remnants of a shattered planetoid, according to the old survey data. Dense, scattered rock and ice, spread across a wide area. Like the debris field back home," Priya said suddenly, catching on. "The one we used to lose the raiders." "Exactly like that," Cole said. "If that pulse really is some kind of guided probe or tracking beam, dense debris might scatter or confuse whatever sensor it's using to follow us. It's not a guarantee, but it's the best option I can see on short notice." "Do it," Reyes said. "Priya, plot us a course through that field, tightest gaps you can find, and give it to Sophia to feed into the nav computer. I want every advantage our size gives us." 15 seconds, Sophia called out, already working. "Engines at 80% and climbing," Okafor reported. 50 seconds until full power, Captain." "We don't have 50 seconds, Priya said, her voice tight. "That pulse will reach us in under a minute, at current closing speed." Reyes gripped the arms of her chair, watching the sensor display, watching the small aggressive blip closing the distance between the Wren and safety, second by agonizing second. "Course plotted," Sophia announced. "Sending to nav now." "Punch it the second we have steerage," Reyes ordered. "Don't wait for full power." The ship shuddered as Okafor redirected every available watt of energy into the engines, and the Wren surged forward, faster than its systems were technically rated to go, straight toward the scattered field of rock and ice that Cole had spotted on the charts. 30 seconds to debris field, Sophia called out. Pulse closing, Priya said, her voice rising with tension. 20 seconds behind us and gaining. The bridge fell into a tense, focused silence, broken only by the clipped, urgent calls of the crew tracking their pursuer and their own rapidly shrinking lead. 10 seconds to debris field, Sophia said. Pulse at 12 seconds behind and closing, Priya reported. We're not going to make it before it catches us, Cole said grimly. Reyes made a split-second decision. Priya, can you get any read at all on what that pulse actually is? Even a rough guess? Priya's hands flew across her console, pulling every scrap of data the passive sensors could gather in the few seconds she had. It's, Captain, I think it's a scanning wave, not a weapon. The energy signature doesn't match anything designed to damage a hull. I think it's trying to identify us, the same way it identified those Draxu fleets before they vanished. Then maybe it's not going to hit us like a missile, Reyes said, thinking fast. Maybe it needs to pass over us, or through us, to actually scan us. If that's true, timing might matter more than speed. What are you thinking, Captain? Cole asked. I'm thinking we don't outrun it, Reyes said. I'm thinking we hide from it. Okafor, the second we cross into that debris field, I want every non-essential system shut down again. Full stealth protocol, same as our approach. If Priya's right and that thing is a scanner, maybe the same trick that got us in unseen can get us out unseen too. That's a big gamble, Captain, Okafor said, already moving to comply. But it's the only card we've got left to play. The Wren shot into the debris field, at full emergency speed, weaving between chunks of shattered rock and drifting ice, with reflexes Reyes had honed over 6 years, and dozens of close calls. Behind them, the scanning pulse swept forward, a wave of invisible energy racing across the darkness, closing the last of the distance between itself and the fleeing ship. Pulse entering the debris field, Priya called out. 5 seconds. Everything dark now, Reyes shouted. Okafor slammed his hand down on the emergency power controls, and every non-essential system on the Wren went dark at once. Lights flickered off throughout the ship. Backup systems hummed to a near-silent minimum. The engines, still needed to steer them through the maze of debris, ran at the lowest possible output that could keep the ship maneuverable, hidden as much as possible behind the scattered rock and ice all around them. For 3 long seconds, nobody on the bridge breathed. The scanning pulse swept over the debris field, an invisible wave of energy washing across rock, ice, and one very small, very quiet human ship, pressed close against the shadow of a tumbling asteroid fragment. On Priya's console, the readout spiked wildly for a heartbeat, then, slowly, began to fade. It's moving past us, Priya whispered, hardly daring to believe it. Captain, I think it lost us. I think the debris confused its scan, the same way we confused the raiders back home. Nobody cheered, nobody moved. They waited, drifting silent among the tumbling rock, watching the sensor readout as the scanning pulse continued outward, sweeping through the rest of the debris field before finally, gradually, dissipating into the empty darkness beyond. Only when Priya confirmed the pulse had faded completely did Reyes allow herself to breathe again. Report, she said quietly. No further activity from the structure, Priya said, still watching her screens intently. Whatever that pulse was, it seems to have given up the search, or run out of range, or both. I don't know how long that will last, Captain. I recommend we don't stick around to find out. Agreed, Reyes said. Okafor, bring the engines back up, minimum power, and let's finish crossing this debris field before we resume our course home. I'd rather stay hidden a little longer than celebrate too soon. It took another 2 hours of careful, quiet navigation before the Wren finally cleared the debris field and resumed its journey back toward Coalition space. Engines still running, as quietly as Okafor could manage. Every crew member watching the sensors, with an intensity that did not fully fade until they had put many more hours of distance between themselves and the vast structure they had left behind. It was Dr. Vidal, arriving on the bridge with a tray of hot food that nobody had eaten in hours, who finally broke the tension. You all look like you've seen a ghost, he said, setting the tray down. Eat something. Whatever that thing was, it's behind us now, and starving yourselves won't make the ship go any faster. A tired laugh rippled through the bridge crew. The first real release of tension since the chase had begun. Reyes allowed herself a small smile, accepting a bowl from the doctor's tray. "Good work, everyone," she said. "All of you. We found what we came to find. We made contact with a survivor, and we got out alive. That's more than anyone back at Fleet Command had any right to expect from us." "Assuming we actually make it back," Cole said, though there was no real worry in his voice now, only the dry humor of a man who had faced down disaster and lived to complain about it afterward. "We'll make it back," Reyes said firmly. "This ship has never let us down yet." 4 days later, the Wren finally crossed back into confirmed Coalition territory, and Sophia sent a priority transmission directly to Admiral Kahlo, encoded with everything they had gathered: sensor data on the massive structure, evidence of dozens of captured ships from multiple unknown species, recordings of the strange scanning pulse, and confirmation, most importantly of all, that at least one survivor remained alive and aware inside that vast, cold machine. The response came back within hours, faster than Reyes had expected. Admiral Kahlo's face appeared on her private terminal screen, and for the first time since she had known him, she saw something like genuine astonishment in his expression. "Captain Reyes," he said, "what you have brought back changes everything. My analysts are still processing your data, but preliminary estimates suggest that structure may be holding survivors from at least 4 different species, possibly more, some going back decades. This is no longer simply an intelligence-gathering matter. The Coalition Council is convening an emergency session within the day." "What happens now, Admiral?" Reyes asked. Kahlo was quiet for a moment, his expression thoughtful. "Now, Captain, the Coalition faces a choice. We can treat this as confirmation of a threat too dangerous to approach, and simply avoid that region of space entirely, sealing off the border and hoping the Silent Ones never come looking for us. Or we can attempt something that has never been tried before: a rescue. An attempt to free whatever survivors remain trapped in that structure, and perhaps, in doing so, finally understand what the Silent Ones actually want." "And which way is the Council leaning?" Reyes asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. "That, Captain, is still being debated fiercely. But I will tell you this: your report has done something no one else has managed in over a century of conflict with the Silent Ones. You have proven that a ship can approach that structure, gather intelligence, and return home alive. Every large fleet that tried has vanished without a trace. Your small ship did what fleets of giants could not." Reyes felt a swell of quiet pride, tempered by the knowledge of what likely came next. "You're going to ask us to go back, aren't you, Admiral?" Kahlo's expression turned serious. "I am going to ask, Captain, not order. If the Council approves a rescue attempt, it will require a ship capable of approaching that structure without being caught by its detection systems for an extended period, long enough to attempt an extraction. Based on everything you have shown us, there may be no better vessel in the entire Coalition fleet for that task than the very ship everyone once dismissed as too small to matter." Reyes looked out through the small viewport beside her desk, at the familiar stars of Coalition space, and thought of the faint, patient pulse of a distress signal from a stranger she had never met, trapped somewhere far away, who had waited who knew how many years for someone to finally answer. "Send the mission profile as soon as the Council decides, Admiral," she said. "I think I already know what my crew is going to say. Earth's smallest fleet ship was chosen for the impossible mission. Aliens never saw it coming." The Coalition Council debated for 3 full days before reaching a decision. Reyes spent those 3 days at Fleet Command, giving testimony to officials from a dozen different species, answering the same questions over and over, watching recordings of her own sensor data played back on screens far larger and more advanced than anything on the Wren. In the end, the Council approved the rescue mission, but with conditions that made Reyes's stomach tighten the moment she heard them. "You will have no support fleet," Admiral Kahlo told her, standing in a small briefing room aboard the Coalition flagship. "The Council will not risk another vessel in that region, not after what happened to the Draxu fleets. If you go, Captain, you go alone, exactly as you did before." "I expected as much," Reyes said. "What about equipment? Anything that might help us actually get people out, once we're there?" Kahlo nodded, gesturing to a case sitting on the table between them. "Coalition engineers have developed a portable device, based partly on data your own science officer provided. It should be capable of disrupting the energy cradle holding a single ship, freeing it from the structure. It is untested outside of simulations, and it will only work at very close range. You will need to physically dock with the structure, or come close enough to deploy the device manually. Reyes opened the case and studied the device inside. A compact unit, roughly the size of a large toolbox, covered in unfamiliar coalition markings. "How many can we free?" she asked. "One device," Kahlo said. "One ship. The engineers built it in a hurry, Captain. Working from theory, more than solid data. I wish I could offer you more." Reyes closed the case, feeling the weight of the decision ahead of her. "One ship, not 30, not even 10. One. We'll make it count," she said. Back aboard the Wren, she gathered her crew in the mess hall one more time and told them everything. The risks, the limitations, the fact that this time, unlike before, they would not simply observe and retreat. This time, they intended to reach out and physically touch the structure that had swallowed 30 warships without a trace, and try to pull someone free from its grasp. Nobody hesitated, nobody asked to be left behind. If anything, the mood in the small mess hall was fiercer than before, sharper, more determined. They had heard that faint, patient distress signal. They had made a promise, in the only language available to them, that help was coming. They intended to keep it. The journey back to the border took 5 days this time, the crew running through the same careful preparations as before, but sharper, more practiced, more confident in their own procedures after having survived them once already. Priya spent the entire trip studying every recording of the scanning pulse they had gathered, searching for the cyclical pattern she had suspected might exist, the rhythm that might tell them when the structure's detection systems were least alert. On the 4th day, she brought her findings to the bridge, practically vibrating with excitement. "Captain, I found it. The pulse isn't constant. It runs on roughly a 6-hour cycle, and there's a window, about 40 minutes long, right in the middle of each cycle, where the pulse strength drops to almost nothing. I think that's when the system resets, or recalibrates, or something similar. If we time our approach to hit that window, we might have a real chance of getting close, without triggering a full detection." "How confident are you in that pattern?" Reyes asked. "Confident enough to bet my life on it," Priya said, "which, considering the mission, I suppose I am." Reyes studied the data herself, cross-referencing Priya's analysis against the recordings from their first encounter. The pattern held up. It was not perfect, not a guarantee, but it was the best chance they had. "All right," she said. "We time our approach for the next low window. Everyone, get some rest if you can. Once we're inside that structure's range, none of us are sleeping again until this is finished, one way or another." 40 hours later, the Wren crept back into position near the massive lattice structure, exactly as it had done before, engines throttled low, every unnecessary system dark and silent. This time, however, they did not simply hold position and observe. As the low window in the scanning cycle approached, Reyes gave the order, and the Wren began its slow, careful approach directly toward the structure itself. "Entering the low window in 3 minutes," Priya reported, her voice tight with concentration. "If my calculations are right, we'll have about 37 minutes of reduced detection risk before the pulse strength climbs back to normal levels. That should be enough time to reach the trapped scout ship, deploy the device, and get clear," Cole said, studying the approach vector on his own console. "Assuming nothing goes wrong." "Something always goes wrong," Okafor muttered from engineering. "Let's just try to make sure it's something small." The Wren slipped closer and closer to the vast structure, its narrow gray hull dwarfed by the immense lattice of rings and spires looming ahead of them. Up close, the structure was even more alien than the passive scans had suggested. Surfaces that seemed to shift and shimmer with faint colors no human eye had a name for. Geometric patterns that repeated in ways that felt deliberate, almost artistic, despite their obviously functional purpose. "There," Priya said, pointing to a section of the structure ahead of them. "The trapped scout ship, the one that answered our signal. I'm reading the same power fluctuation as before." Reyes guided the Wren toward the small, motionless shape held within its strange energy cradle, the ship's hull gray and pitted, clearly of a design the Coalition had never encountered before, unlike anything from the Draxu or any other known species. "That's not a Draxu ship," Cole observed. "Different hull design entirely. Doesn't matter, Reyes said. Whoever's in there is still someone who's been waiting a long time for help. Sophia, prep the docking clamp. Okafor, get the extraction device ready to deploy the moment we're close enough. The Wren maneuvered with painstaking precision, closing the final distance to the trapped scout ship until its small docking clamp made gentle contact with the alien hull, magnetic locks engaging with a soft clunk that seemed impossibly loud in the tense silence of the bridge. Contact confirmed, Sophia reported. Docking seal holding. Okafor, you're up, Reyes said. Get that device attached to their energy cradle, and get back inside as fast as you safely can. Okafor had already suited up before they even reached the structure, anticipating exactly this moment. He moved quickly through the airlock, the compact device from Fleet Command secured to his back, and made his way across the short gap between the two ships, his boots magnetized to the alien hull. On the bridge, the crew watched through the docking camera feed, hearts pounding, as Okafor worked to attach the device to the strange, glowing lattice of energy that held the alien scout ship fast against the larger structure. 22 minutes left in the low window, Priya called out. He's working as fast as he can, Reyes said, trying to project calm she did not entirely feel. Okafor's voice crackled over the comm, breathing hard with exertion. Devices attached. Activating now. Fleet Command said this thing might take a few minutes to fully disrupt the cradle field, and I have absolutely no way to know if that estimate is accurate. Copy that, Reyes said. Get back inside, Chief. Let's not push our luck standing out there. Okafor made his way back across the hull and through the airlock, and the moment the outer door sealed behind him, a soft chime sounded on the bridge. Device is active, Priya confirmed. Energy field around the trapped ship is fluctuating. I think it's working, Captain, but it's slow. Much slower than I'd like. Minutes ticked by, each one feeling like an hour. The glowing energy cradle around the alien scout ship flickered and pulsed, weakening gradually, agonizingly slowly, while the crew of the Wren watched their own countdown to the end of the low detection window tick steadily downward alongside it. 10 minutes left in the window, Priya reported. Energy cradle at 60% strength and falling. Come on, Reyes murmured, willing the process to move faster. Then, without warning, the entire structure around them shuddered, a deep vibration that seemed to travel through the very hull of the Wren itself. What was that? Cole asked sharply. I don't know, Priya said, scanning frantically. Captain, I'm reading a massive energy surge, but it's not coming from the scanning system. It's coming from somewhere deep inside the structure itself. Something's reacting to what we're doing. They know we're here, Sophia said grimly. Maybe, Reyes said, or maybe something else is happening. Priya, can you tell what's causing that surge? Priya's fingers flew across her console, and her eyes widened as new data scrolled across her screen. Captain, I don't think this is an attack. I think the entire structure is responding to the energy cradle being disrupted. Like it's some kind of automated system, reacting to damage. I'm reading similar fluctuations, spreading to other sections of the structure, not just the one we're working on. Automated, Reyes repeated slowly. You mean there might not be anyone actually controlling this thing? No living crew, no commander, just a machine, reacting to whatever it detects? It would explain a lot, Priya said. The lack of any communication attempt, the mechanical regularity of the scanning pulse, even the way it simply captured ships instead of destroying them outright. Captain, what if the Silent Ones aren't a hostile species attacking on purpose? What if this whole structure is some kind of ancient automated defense system, left running long after whoever built it is gone, or somewhere else entirely, simply doing exactly what it was originally programmed to do, capturing anything it identifies as a threat, with no one left to ever turn it off? Reyes absorbed this, the pieces slowly clicking into place. It fit. It fit disturbingly well. 100 years of Draxu fear, 100 years of vanished fleets, all caused not by some cunning alien enemy plotting conquest, but by a machine, mindlessly following instructions given to it long ago, with no one left alive who even remembered why. That doesn't make it any less dangerous, Cole said. Mindless or not, it's still capable of swallowing entire fleets. No, Reyes agreed. But it might mean there's no malice behind it. Just a very old, very powerful mistake, still running, because nobody ever told it to stop. 5 minutes left in the window, Priya called out, her voice tightening with new urgency. Energy cradle at 30%, and falling faster now. Whatever's happening to the rest of the structure, it seems to be accelerating the disruption process on our target too. Stay on it, Reyes said. We're almost there. The structure continued to shudder and pulse around them, waves of strange light rippling across its vast surface, spreading outward from the section where the Wren remained docked. On the bridge, everyone watched with a mixture of hope and dread, unsure whether they were witnessing a rescue or the opening moments of their own destruction. Cradle at 10%, Priya reported. Almost there, Captain. 2 minutes left in the window, Sophia added. The energy field around the trapped scout ship flickered one final time, and then, with a soft flash of light visible even through the docking camera, it vanished entirely. The alien vessel, freed from its captivity after who knew how many years, drifted free, held only by the Wren's own docking clamp. "It's free!" Priya shouted, unable to contain her excitement. "Captain, the cradle is completely gone. The ship is loose." "Contact the survivor," Reyes ordered immediately. "Sophia, use the same emergency frequency as before. Tell them to hold on, we're getting them out of here." But before Sophia could even begin transmitting, a new alarm blared across the bridge, sharp and urgent. "Captain, the scanning pulse is spiking again," Priya said, her earlier excitement giving way instantly to fresh alarm. "Full strength, way ahead of schedule. The disruption to the cradle must have triggered some kind of security response. We're out of time. Detach and go, now," Reyes ordered. "Full power. Best course out of here, Cole. Plot it." The docking clamp released with a mechanical thud, and the Wren surged away from the vast structure, the freed alien scout ship tumbling loose in its wake, its own systems flickering weakly to life, for the first time in who knew how long. "They're not moving under their own power," Priya said, watching the readings. "Captain, that ship has been dead too long. Its engines probably need time to properly restart. We can't just leave it drifting there." Reyes made a split-second decision. "Sophia, get that ship's docking clamp reconnected, tow position. We're not leaving anyone behind out here. Not after everything we did to get them free." It took precious seconds, seconds that felt like an eternity, with the scanning pulse building rapidly behind them. But Sophia managed to re-establish the docking connection, securing the freed alien vessel to the Wren's hull in a tow configuration. "Connection secure," Sophia called out. "But Captain, towing that extra mass is going to slow us down significantly. We won't be able to outrun the pulse at this speed." "Then we don't outrun it," Reyes said, her mind racing back to their escape through the debris field on the first mission. "Cole, is there anything like that debris field nearby? Anything we can use to break line of sight?" Cole scanned the charts frantically. "Nothing close enough, Captain. We're too far from any natural cover this time." The scanning pulse surged outward from the structure behind them, faster and stronger than anything they had seen before, closing the distance with terrifying speed. Priya suddenly sat up straight. "Captain, wait. The other captured ships. There are dozens of them still held around the structure. If we can put some of that mass between us and the pulse, even briefly, it might scatter the same way the debris field did." "You want to hide behind the very ships that are still trapped?" Dr. Vidal asked, startled. "It's not ideal," Priya admitted, "but it's the same principle. Dense mass, irregular shapes, might confuse the scan just long enough for us to get clear." Reyes didn't have a better option, and she didn't have time to search for one. "Cole, plot a course that takes us close past as many of those trapped hulls as you can manage, without slowing us down further. Do it now." The Wren banked hard, weaving a tight, desperate path between the scattered shapes of captured warships still fixed around the massive structure, the towed alien scout ship trailing awkwardly behind, its dead weight making every maneuver harder, slower, more dangerous than it should have been. "Pulse closing fast," Priya reported, her voice tight with fear. "We might not make it clear in time." "We will," Reyes said, gripping the controls with white-knuckled determination, threading the Wren between two massive silent hulls with only meters to spare. "This ship has never let us down yet." The scanning pulse swept through the field of trapped ships behind them, its energy scattering and diffusing across dozens of large metal hulls, exactly as Priya had hoped. By the time it finally passed through the tangled mass of captured vessels and reached open space beyond, its strength had dropped dramatically, its precision scattered, its ability to pinpoint a single small fleeing ship badly weakened. "It's losing us," Priya said, hardly daring to believe it as she watched the readings fade. "Captain, I think it's losing us." The Wren burst free of the structure's immediate vicinity, engines roaring at maximum output despite the extra drag of their towed cargo, putting distance between themselves and the vast lattice of rings and spires that had, once again, very nearly claimed them. It took another 6 hours of tense, careful running before Priya finally confirmed the scanning pulse had faded completely, unable to relocate them once they had cleared the field of debris and captured ships. By then, the freed alien scout ship's own systems had stabilized enough for its remaining crew, a single exhausted survivor, from a species none of them had ever encountered before, thin and weak but very much alive, to make contact through the docking connection, expressing gratitude in a language none of the Wren's crew understood, but whose meaning was unmistakable all the same. Dr. Vidal spent the rest of the journey home tending to their rescued guest, while the rest of the crew finally allowed themselves to relax, if only slightly, knowing the hardest part of the mission was, for now, behind them. Word of the rescue spread through the Coalition fleet faster than Reyes could have imagined. What began as a mocked, overlooked scout corvette, the smallest ship in the entire fleet, had succeeded not once but twice at a mission every larger, more powerful warship had failed to even attempt. The story of the Wren's escape through the field of captured ships, of a single rescued survivor after decades of silence, spread from crew to crew, from species to species, until captains who had once laughed at the sight of the tiny Earth vessel began asking, quietly, respectfully, how such a small ship had managed what fleets of giants could not. Admiral Kahlo met the Wren personally when it finally docked back at the fleet yard above Threnvos, standing at the airlock as Captain Reyes and her exhausted crew emerged, their rescued guest carried carefully behind them on a medical stretcher. "Captain Reyes," Kahlo said, his voice carrying real warmth for the first time since she had known him, "the Council has reviewed your report, and the survivor's testimony, once translation is complete, may finally give us real answers about the Silent Ones, after a century of fear and ignorance. You did not simply survive an impossible mission, Captain. You may have opened the door to understanding, and perhaps someday, freeing every other ship still trapped in that structure." Reyes looked back at her crew, exhausted, filthy, and utterly, quietly proud, standing together the way they always had, 12 people who had refused to let their ship's small size define what they were capable of. "We didn't do it because we were the strongest ship in the fleet, Admiral," she said. "We did it because we were the one nobody expected. Maybe that's worth remembering, next time the Coalition needs someone to do the impossible." Kahlo nodded slowly, glancing past her at the small, battered, endlessly stubborn ship docked behind them, its dull gray hull looking, for the first time in 6 years, less like a joke and more like a legend in the making. "I don't think anyone will underestimate the Wren again, Captain," he said. "Earth's smallest ship has earned its place among the greatest this fleet has ever known." And far away, at the edge of known space, deep within a structure built by hands no living being remembered, dozens of trapped ships continued to wait quietly in the dark, no longer forgotten, no longer alone, because somewhere out among the stars, a small, stubborn human ship had proven that even the smallest flame could light the way home.